Hello guys and welcome back to another video. So in the previous video we have seen about a simple basic um, application how you can get uh, perform a get request using the module request and fetch that data and render it on a web page, right? So extending the idea of Flask, in this video we'll be seeing about a small application that is a to-do list, a simple to-do list with a database. So extending the idea of Flask, I'll just begin from the starting. What is the folder structure? What are the modules required, and etc. So this is our app. So for the editor or IDE, the IDE which I'm using over here is VS Code. Based on your preference, you can also use PyCharm, IDLE, etc. So VS Code is the choice for me, and this is the folder structure. So going according to the folder structure in Flask or while creating a Flask application is really important because there are certain um, um, folders or techniques that search for certain folders. For example, if you want to render a HTML file, it needs to be in a template, or if you need to load a external CSS file, it needs to be in a static folder. So Flask searches for those folders and uses it for the rendering part. So this is the simple folder structure which we are using it over here. This is our main application. This is the templates folder, which consists of a simple HTML file. So begin with this. Initially create a main folder, then do this part. So this is the folder. So this is the code will be provided in the description below. So for this, the database model or the database modeling technique which I'm using over here is the Flask SQL Alchemy. So I'll just take you to that docs page. So this is how you can install after installing Flask. So first install Flask and then use this command for installing Flask as SQL Alchemy. So basically it is a database which uses the class modeling technique. So it creates a class. Within that class you can create a model. For example, if you need certain fields like ID, content, done, which I'm using it over here, it creates that column or that field for you. So I'll just get over to that in a minute. So install Flask SQL Alchemy. You can also uh, give it a read because it's really helpful if you initially uh, apply this and go to that to do app task. So give it a read, it's really helpful. This is how you can install the Flask SQL Alchemy. And so the next part is the code. Rest all the things are similar to the previous video. You just need to systematically install Flask, right? Even in Django, we use the same technique of creating a models, and within that model, you can use the database mechanism to create fields and columns and etc. That's a whole another chapter. But for this video, I'm just keeping it simple. Install Flask SQL Alchemy and uh, go with it, right? So initially from Flask and request are the two modules that you require for getting data and everything. Then render template is for rendering the templates. If you're using VS Code, hover into the module, you'll get a small description or brief explanation about what the use of that module is. So this is one of the good benefits of using Flask, sorry, VS Code and Flask together. So it provides a brief explanation. So SQL Alchemy, this is a class used to control integration with the Flask application depending on how you use it, and etc, etc, right? So this is how you can initiate. So as a previous in the previous video which I've shown, app is equal to Flask. These are some basic steps you need to perform to initiate that application. So now this app.config, these are the configuration settings which are required for uh, providing a URL to that database which we are going to create over here. So for now there is no database. Like, see, you can see there is no database over here because we have not started the Flask app until now, right? So this is the database which will be created. It is an SQLite database, nothing big like a MySQL or something like that. SQLite with database. And you can also uh, if you are on Ubuntu, you can just go to the Ubuntu App Store, search for SQLite or a DB browser. DB browser, yeah. So I'll just show you over here. So you can go and also install this if you're using Ubuntu, or you can also use it on Mac or Windows. Just install this. If you want to get to know the database structure and everything, which I'll show you. So install this DB browser SQLite, and yeah. So as I've told you earlier, you need to integrate that database and the Flask app together. So this is the line which is performing that action. So, and this is the database name, todo.db, right? So as I've told you earlier, it is basically a model that creates your database like fields. So in this case, db.model is a basic structure how you can initiate that model, and as a parameter, and fields over here are, or the columns over here are id, content, and done. So basically those are columns which I've told you. It just creates a column and it provides a property. So for that id column, it is an integer and it is a primary key, right? If you are familiar with SQL and things, you know the concept of a primary key and foreign key, etc, right? So that id column is primary key which is uniquely being identified in the entire database, right? Now the content is basically a text, so here we'll take the input of the user as a task, right? And done is basically, if you are completed with that task, it will either provide you a boolean value, right? So boolean is something like true or false. The default value over here is false, it is not done yet, but we'll get over here that we'll just get to that point in a minute or two, right? So here we are initiating that database model and providing a initiating that model and creating it. So this is how you can create a database model with SQL Alchemy, right? So this is a section where the database is been created with certain columns, right? So now coming to the route parts. So this is a basic route, like without any specific routes like home, about, etc. So if you just start the server, the page will be loaded, right? You don't need to like slash home slash about, etc. So that is the routing part which has functions. So in Flask you have to attach functions over those routes, so you need to perform those routes, and for those routes you need to have certain functions attached to it, right? So for that part, task is like acquiring all data like select method, and acquiring all data from the database like select dot star from that database, and rendering that page to the list HTML, which I've shown over here, which I've shown you over here. List and task is basically storing the task and fetching it from the database, right? So when the user creates some task, it is stored automatically in the database. It is not like rendered into the web page. We're using the querying mechanism and rendering into the web page, right? So like the previous, like we have done for the JSON object, you can use task and task. So for that template, we are using this argument. Now for the post request, so post is something like if you want to submit something in return of some data. So for example, in the previous video we have done a get request. So get is basically like fetching data. When it comes to post, I'll just give you an example. For example, if you are performing a login operation and you need to provide a username and password as a post request, you can do that by passing data for the fields username and password. So basically post request is like sending data and in return getting something in certain format. So for that we have used request. So this function is basically like when the user is creating a task, it will be added into database and rendered into onto the web page and redirect it to the home page. So like when I create a task that is on this parameter route, it will add the task to database and like add and redirect it to the home page, which I'll show you in a minute. You will get an idea about that. And similarly for the delete route and the done route, the task is same. It will go to that delete route and redirect you to the home page once that specific delete or done task is completed. So for delete done, the task is similar. And what is db.session, right? So for now I'll just get over there. So this is the code. Like for done, delete, and the adding of task, the functions are almost similar. For the delete task, if the task is something specific, so delete slash the task id. So the id is this one, right? So id over here is a primary key, and it will take that primary key and uh, provide that id slash route and delete that specific task only. So it is a mechanism. So for example, slash delete slash integer id task. So slash integer will be a unique id. So that unique id is attached to some specific task and delete that task, right? And redirect you to the home page. So this is it for the code. Code will be available. If you want to provide some upgrade to it, you can surely give it a try. So you will be noticing errors over here, right? For db. So there is nothing uh, related to the code. The code is working fine. It is related to something known as file length. So it is something that VS Code uses to debug the code. So it is nothing related. The code is working perfectly fine, so you can execute it. If you are using on any other IDE, you won't get this error. I'll just show you. And okay, so the template. So this is a template. I'll just zoom out a bit. Okay, so you can see the entire code over here, the body, and there is a division label to do app, and the adding, deleting, and doing of the task is so basically the adding task operation is done via a form, that is a post request, like over here. So if you're familiar with HTML and things like that, it is a post request. It will send the data and give you a certain output, right? So forms are important. And as we have done in the previous video, like looping it through the task. So this task is related to the argument which is passed over here, this one. So the for loop, and then for loop end. So what this statement, similarly for the for loop, if statement is almost similar. So for if statement, if you initiate if statement, you have to end it, or else it will not be completed. This is the Jinja templating format. Just give it a read before doing it. I'll just provide the link of that Jinja templating documentation in the description below. So it's necessary. If you give it a read, it will be better. So when I click on that route, that is, it will fetch the ID for done, and the strike will be made. So for if you are familiar with the strike through element or strike through property, it will strike that specific task when the task is done. And same for delete, it will, when I click, basically these are two links, done and delete are two routes, and that those two routes are attached to that to specific task, done and delete. So when I hit that link, the code will be executed for that route and the operation has been done. So this is how you can perform the rendering part of it. So for both the if and the for loop, you need to start it and end it, or else you'll get an error. And the done and delete is a task which is very specific, and it relates to the primary key of the database. So it is not just random thing, right? Now coming to the execution part, you can either just run it like this. See that server has been started, and this is the app. So currently there is nothing over here, and as soon as I have started the app, there will be a database created. As you can see, to do.database. Now for seeing the database, what are the content of it, I'll just show you how you can see this. So open DB browser, open database, and we'll just go to desktop, Flask log. So this is the database, open. So you can see this are the content, ID, content, and done. It is similar to the model that we have created, right? So this is the model that we have created, ID, content, and done. So you can get an idea, right? So this is the model, ID, content, and this is the primary key. And currently there is nothing in here. So now let me just add something. Task 1. So if you know that a form, when it is entered directly, if there is no button attached to it, it will act as a post request, right? So as soon as I hit enter, it will add the task, right? So this is the task 1, and these are two routes, as you can see, h tag, right? So as you can see, when I hover onto this delete and done, there are two routes provided, right? So you can just go to the that this section over here, when I hover onto it, and see what is provided, right? Done /1. So done is a specific route with an ID 1. So that task 1 is been assigned a primary key 1. So it will be very useful when you perform that done and delete task, right? Now I'll just create another task 2. So now you can see done and delete, those are two routes with the primary key 2, right? So for each task there is a primary key. It helps you for performing the done and delete operation, right? Task 3, add. As you can see, delete and 3, right? Just switch on over here this section of the uh, page. When I hover onto it, see, so that part is this. So done slash the task ID, delete slash the task ID, right? it relates now, right? So see, as you can see, there was a post request for adding the task. We have created 3 tasks, task 1, 2 and 3, right? So there is a post request over here. So now you can get what is post request, right? Now when I perform done, it gives you a strike through. So how that is performed, when I click on that done button, the strike through will be strike, this is a strike tag, it will be performed, and that done or that task has been strike through with that ID attached to it, right? And redirected to the home page. See, done slash that. Just give a look at that routes slash done slash one. So I have strike through that uh, task with the ID 1. So that task has been done, right? And the route has been redirected to the home page. So that is the purpose of redirect, right? Now if I delete it, it goes, right? Now even if you close this or like uh, close the server, if you rerun it again, you can get the task, right? How? We are not storing it like it is getting you these things from the database, right? So this is a concept of sessions, how sessions are maintained within the database. So this is the part through which this specific task is performed. Sessions, when a task is created, even if the server is closed or deleted or whatever user performs, that specific session is being maintained even if the browser gets deleted or closed or server is closed, right? That is a good feature. So this is how you can use sessions to um, create some more functionalities like login or sign up or something like that. If a user logs in, the session is been maintained, and if the user logs out, the session is been deleted, right? So this is one important thing that you can do for sessions, right? Like I'll just create some random task. So this is a random task with each task has its own unique ID. Each and every task has its own unique ID, and that done and delete operation are performed via those ID with those routes, right? So you can done, delete, done, delete, and even if I close the server and rerun it, right now it is not, the server is not wrong. So you can just simply on it, and the tasks are still over there. This is due to the sessions functionality, right? So if you want to extend the idea of sessions, you can sure give it a read to it and implement new things. So guys, this was it for this video, guys, and the code will be available in the description if you want to upgrade it, and if you want to implement new things like a login page or a sign up page, you can surely give it a try. And yep, this is it. If you have any queries and concerns, you can definitely comment down below, and you can definitely comment down below, and we'll extend something more and try to implement a login and sign up page in future. So stay tuned for that, stay tuned for those video, guys. And yeah, this is the code, and this is the format, and yeah, thanks for watching.